When we're young, we have an amazing, positive outlook about how great life is going to be, but somewhere along the line, we forget to dream and end up settling. Join Up Dots features amazing people who refuse to give up and chose to go after their dreams. This is your blueprint for greatness. So here's your host, live from the back of his garden in the UK, David Ralph.
Yes, hello everybody. Hello to episode 35. And it's a masterclass today because I have got a gentleman all the way from America. Aren't most of my guests from America? And he's been on his own path for the last few years and came to my attention from being a podcasting legend. Yes, there's more than one of us out there. So he really has a fascinating story which touches on many areas of physical and emotional heartache and obstacles. When he was just 5, he fell over 30 feet off a bridge and spent over 3 weeks in a coma. Not good. Fortunately, the only damage he received from this fall was a loss of hearing in his ear. Because of the relearning he had to do, including walking, he was always picked last for sports and picked on the most. You would have thought at this point he would have lashed out and fought back with resentment, but that would have been nowhere near the truth of what happened. Instead, he enrolled in karate and in a very short time achieved black belt status to become a teacher. And in his words, he says, "Looking back, while I taught the mechanics of kicking and punching, what really excited me was helping the students understand their inner strength and believe in themselves again." He had found his path in life, but now just had to find a way of channeling his passion. And that's where his wife and business partner comes in, and with a fascinating journey of her own, taking her from a childhood growing up in China to the culture shock of a life in America, she states that she pursued education with a passion and studied to become a dentist, finally owning her own very successful practice. And that, for many, would have been job done. But like her husband, she felt something was missing. She felt drawn to creating a better world for others. And so together, this powerhouse of a married team have taken it on themselves to create their own business built around coaching, podcasting, writing, and being hugely positive to create a future that is 100% unique to themselves. So there is no better time than today to bring onto the show and start joining up the dots for one and only Joel Boggess. How are you today, Joel?
David, I am doing fantastic, and I am excited to be a guest today on Join Up Dots. This is tremendous.
I love Americans because Americans do excitement, don't they?
Absolutely.
Even going into a shop, I've done many states. I tell people, I tell it quite a lot of times on this show, and a lot of Americans go, "Really?" And I've been to every state bar 2. I haven't done Alaska and I haven't done Hawaii. But other than that, I've toured America over the last 20 years. And even people who are working in careers that you would say are probably a little bit humdrum still bring an excitement out, which I don't see in the United Kingdom very often.
That's interesting. You know, sometimes people are connected with what it is that really brings out their best. And when people are able to really find a career, to find a vocation that taps into who they really are, what excites them, what they stand for, it can be an absolute difference maker. So you have probably run into many of those types of people as you've toured through the States.
Yeah, I do find it amazing that as waitresses, I was in Dallas once, and I went into a restaurant, and there was about 9 or 10 of us, and it was a sports bar, and there was screens everywhere showing hockey in one and loads of different sports all around. And you can imagine the noise in these bars when one team of blokes was watching one screen and another team were watching another screen. So it was like a cacophony of sound. And this lady came up to us and she said, "Can I help you guys?" And we said, "Yeah. Have you got any sort of beer and food?" And she said, "Yeah, no problem at all." And she went round the table, and there was like 9 or 10 of us. And she said, "Can I take your order?" And I told her my drink, and I told her the food. She didn't write anything down. I went to the next person, and I said to my mate, "This is going to be terrible, this." You know, she didn't write a single thing down. Well, she came back, and absolutely perfect. She put everything we ordered in front of us in exactly the right position as we ordered it. And I said to her, I said, "How did you do that? You know, you didn't write a single thing down and you remembered all the orders." And she said, 2 reasons. One, I've been doing it a long time. And the second one, I care. Isn't that a brilliant answer?
That is a brilliant answer, and that just kind of reinforces what I've always said is when you're doing something that is in alignment with who you are, and it really comes down to serving and to being of value to people. You're going to be sharper, you're going to be more enthusiastic, and you're going to have more joy with what you're doing. And that lady that was waiting on you and your tribe of friends, she was serving with the best part of herself, and that's why she was on her A game.
Yeah, she certainly was. And I bet she's still on her A game now. And that was probably about 15 years ago. But you are certainly somebody who, as far as I can see, although you had a bit of a rocky kind of start and your passage through childhood and stuff, you're on your A game now, aren't you? You know your unique path and you play to your strengths on a daily basis.
I do, David, and thank you for such kind words. We are excited about really making a difference for people and helping people understand how to make a difference in a way that makes a difference to them and moves them internally. And it is absolutely a game changer when a person understands how to connect with themselves at a deeper level.
How do people do that, though? And I'm going to focus in on you, but I'm just going to say generically, because I'm sure there's loads of people out there listening to this show today, and they're on their way to a job that they're not keen on. I wouldn't say that they hate it, but they're not keen on. And they're saying, yeah, it's all right for these two guys saying, I've connected with myself, I've found my passion. How do you do that? Is there a way of kickstarting that job?
Yeah, absolutely. And wow, what a great question. Thank you for asking. A striking observation, David, that I made in my own life's journey is that the past leaves clues. And as far back as I can remember, there's always been a pull in my spirit, a pull, and you've kind of touched on it already, a pull to work with people and to help them to really get in touch with their inner strength and to help them to overcome. And as you mentioned, early in life, even during my teenage years, I became a karate instructor. And as you pointed out, I was teaching the mechanics of, punching or spinning or kicking, things of that nature. But really, that was just a mechanical application. I was actually teaching them how to find value and worth within themselves. And when I got out of high school and I entered college, went to Texas Tech, that's in Lubbock, Texas.
Buddy Holly's birthplace, isn't it?
Yeah. Wow, that's good. I took a job as a swimming instructor. Now think about this for a second. I went from karate teacher to swimming instructor, and while the mechanics of what I was teaching the kids, because this was kids again, the mechanics had changed because now I was teaching kids how to dog paddle and how to kick and how to blow bubbles and things of that nature. So the mechanics changed, but really I was still helping all of my students, kids, and then also teenagers later. I was still helping them to tap into their own inner strength, to develop more confidence, more self-esteem, and to overcome their fear. When I got out of college, I then went on to graduate school twice, and then I took a job as a personal fitness trainer, and then later as a counselor. I got a master's in counseling psychology, and while the mechanics changed twice, from personal trainer then to counselor, it was always the same thing for me. I was helping people to really find something within themselves, something that they could get handles on, to move them forward so that they could experience themselves at their absolute finest. And that's always been a reoccurring theme in me, is to help people one-on-one to experience those kind of revelations within themselves.
It is
go ahead.
It's interesting that you say right at the beginning there that there are clues in your life, because that's really the mantra of this show, Join Up Dots. And we're going to play the speech from Steve Jobs later. But I have always thought, and now I'm having these conversations on a daily basis, sometimes 5 or 6 times in a day,
Okay.
I don't try to do many of those days because it gets a bit exhausting, to be honest. But literally every single person says to me, yes, if I had spent more time looking back on the things I was good at and the things that were uniquely me, I would have found my happiness quicker. And I totally believe what you were saying, that the clues are there, the dots are there, as I say, that if we reflect back and we look at those things that were naturally easy, were playing to our strengths, put us in a position of flow where we weren't aware of the time, then join all those up and try to create a career or a lifestyle around those, and you've got a hell of a head start. But we don't, do we? We just don't do that. We just go for the money, we go for the easy job that's just in front of us, and we don't spend time reflecting on our inner self.
Yeah, you're right, David. And it's people have the best of intentions, but sometimes people just don't know that the past leaves clues all along the way. And may I tell you a very quick story?
You tell me a long story.
Okay, fantastic. I worked with this one woman. She is she's in her 50s. She has 2 full-grown daughters, and her first name is Kim. And I write about her story in the Finding Your Voice book. And Kim, for a long time, didn't think she had anything to offer, and she came to coaching. She entered coaching with me. It's kind of a last resort, if you will. And she said, Joel, I've just got to find something different. I need a new job, because this job that I'm working in is highly, highly toxic. And it was actually showing up in physical symptoms. Her heart would race, her palms would get sweaty, and her equilibrium would be thrown off. And it got to the point where she had to brace herself against the wall and say a little silent prayer before she entered into the doctor's office, which is where she worked at the time, to steel her resolve and get ready for another day that would drain her spirit. And when we went through some coaching together, and I challenged her about some of the things that were in her past, some of the things that brought her meaning, brought her joy, brought her happiness, she couldn't get away from the fact that women, especially moms, would come to her over and over and over again, wanting guidance, wanting direction, wanting some answers about, how do you do this mothering thing? How do you do this brand new wife thing? How do you do this? And she had been doing that for a long, long time. Women are being attracted to her. And here's the thing. She didn't see it as her doing anything special. She told me, she said, well, that's just me. That's just something I do. And I said, putting my finger on my nose and then pointing my other finger at her, I said, exactly. It is just you. That's the value. That's some of the value that you bring to people. And see, here's the thing with Kim. She was blind to it. She was blind to what she was doing because she was just being herself. She was fully expressing some of her gifts. And what's really kind of sad, David, is because she was doing that, nobody had to teach her. It was woven into who she was. She didn't place any value on that. And for a long time, she would run from what she could not do, which is to provide mentoring, to provide coaching, to provide information and solutions to young moms and new wives. And to make a long story short, I don't know how good of a job I've done with that, but in the end, she ended up walking away from a toxic environment, an environment that was stripping her of her soul. And she found the courage and the family support to build a business around what she had always done in the first place, which is to provide leadership, guidance, support to the women that needed to be served by her. Exciting times for Kim and her family. And later, after she and I finished our coaching, I got this long email from one of her daughters. She has 2, and without reading the whole email to you, basically what she said is, Joel, thank you. I have my mother back. And I'm getting emotional just talking about it, David, because the ripple that Kim created in her family will be felt for generations because she understood the value of looking back and realizing that the past left clues in her life.
Do you feel the same though, Joel? Do you feel once you're doing something that is inherently you,
mm-hmm.
Was there a part of you that was a bit dismissive about the value that you can provide? You just telling that story there, I
mm-hmm.
was enthralled, and I know that my listeners will be enthralled as well. You know, I was hanging on every word because I felt the passion, the enthusiasm, and the pride that you felt that your contact with this lady had changed and caused those ripples. But it still gets back to you. And do you kind of think, oh, that's just me? You know, I won't charge for that coaching because it's just something I naturally do anyway.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course, I'm human, and to doubt yourself is to be human. It is straight up. And I, just like anybody else, I doubted myself. I doubted myself through traditional education, through the school system, through college. I knew that I needed to come alongside people and help them to realize the best within themselves. I knew that. And I also knew I needed to be a in front of people, a spokesperson type or a media type. And I had to lead that charge. I had to help people take that hill. Of course I knew that. But did I tap into it? No. Heck no. No, because I didn't think that was the right thing to do. And I, like a lot of people, you know them, I know them, people that are in our circle and people that we come in contact with on a day-to-day basis, they are trying to live up to other people's expectations. You know, what mom said you should do, or what dad said you should do, or what, you know, leaders in our life, teachers, pastors, coaches, counselors, we're trying to live up to what they think that we should do. And, you know, they had the best of intentions. For the most part, everybody has the best of intentions, but there comes a point in time when it's time for a relaunch. And it's time for someone to move into the second half of their life. And it's time to start calling the shots and creating your own rules when you move into that second half. And here's the thing that I love about relaunch and about second half is because your second half, your listener's second half, David, can happen at any given moment. Let me give you a quick example. My wife and I were speaking together. We were leading a workshop, a little 2-hour workshop at a yoga studio. And there were mostly women. There was one man in there besides myself. Those women were at varieties of different ages. You know, there was one young lady there who was in middle school. There were ladies there that were 30, 40, 50. And one of the things that I said right at the end of the workshop, I said, ladies, gentlemen, everyone, your second half can begin today. Today. It doesn't matter your age, doesn't matter your experience, doesn't matter your income level or your educational level. Your second half can begin today, right now, if you decide for it to begin. And that's the key right there. And that filled the room with hope and inspiration, because that's what it takes. It just takes a decision.
Well, it doesn't even need a decision, does it? It just needs something. When you look back to your dot, and I called it the big dot, and the way I describe it, it's like a huge dot in your life that really you hit and you bounce off onto your unique path. But actually, it could be like a pebble. It just needs to be a word from someone. It needs, you know, I've been quite open that my dot was just simply, I was working with a manager, but I decided I couldn't work with anymore. Simple as that. And my manager left. This new lady came in. I just didn't see eye to eye with her. Now, if somebody else had come in who was as good as the bloke before, then I probably would have still been there. You know, it just needs something, doesn't it, to open you up to the opportunities that that are out there for you in life.
And that's what I want your listeners to get. There's really 3 key ingredients to setting yourself up for a successful relaunch or a successful transition into your next season or into your second half. And that is, you have to be open. You have to be receptive. And you also have to be gentle with yourself. And when you're able to connect those 3 dots, being open to possibilities, being receptive to what your mentors, your coaches, your spouses, your loved ones are trying to impart into you, and to be gentle with yourself. It's amazing. It's like releasing magic dust in the air.
What do you mean by
David?
being gentle with yourself, Joe?
Okay, yeah, that's a great question. Well, most people, with the best of intentions, are way too hard on themselves. Let's say you're driving somewhere, and you don't quite get the light, so you're there stuck at a red light. Well, being harsh on yourself would be, man, I can't believe it, another red light. I really should have left earlier. What am I thinking? How can I be running late going to this appointment? I need to be there. My reputation's on the line, so forth and so on. That's being hard on yourself. But being gentle with yourself is to not even experience that. Yeah, you still get a red light. Yeah, it's unfortunate, but you know what? It's not the end of the world. It's going to be just fine. And you're going to be able to make wherever it is that you are going, and everything's going to be fine. So if you learn to be gentle with yourself, and that is a learning process, but once you learn to be gentle with yourself, what ends up happening, David, is you save yourself a tremendous amount of spiritual and emotional energy.
It's funny, as you're talking about that, Joel,
Yes, sir.
I've got this image of this very old Tom Hanks film called Joe versus the Volcano. Do you remember that film?
Yeah. And go ahead.
And if anyone's out there hasn't been aware of Joe versus the Volcano, it's not a Tom Hanks classic in any shape or form. It's not Forrest Gump or Saving Private Ryan or any of the other sort of genius films he's done. But I think it was the first one that he did where him and Meg Ryan connect. And he works in a job which is just terrible. It's horrible. Everybody just kind of drags themselves in, drags themselves out, and he gets through the day. And when you see the film, you think, why is he putting up with this? Because his health is rubbish, his life is rubbish, and it's dire, totally dire. But he does, because that's what's expected of him, and he doesn't know there's anything better. Then a doctor comes to him one day and says to him, look, I've checked your health records and you've got this brain cloud, you've got this thing wrong with you, and you've only got 6 months to live. So he goes, oh my God, I've got 6 months to live. And the next day a millionaire turns up at his door, all kind of connected, and says to him, look, I've heard that you've only got 6 months to live. I will pay for everything you want for the next 6 months if at the end of the 6 months you throw yourself into the volcano. And there's jewels on this island, and all the natives in the island will only let us have the jewels if the gods who control the volcano are pacified. And that needs a human sacrifice, and you jump in. And he decides to do this. And it's the weird thing that once he gets himself away from that environment, once he's starting being gentle with himself, once he's being more open to opportunities, actually he realizes, I don't think I do want to die, and his life is better, and he's out in the fresh air, and he meets the beautiful Meg Ryan, and they fall in love, and everything is great, just because he pulled himself away from that toxic situation, like you were talking about, Kim, and created a path that is all his.
Yeah, you've got to being gentle with yourself is all about self-care and taking care of yourself, basically, is what I'm trying to say. And that's really where it all starts. Moving forward into a better place in your next half, it starts with how you take care of yourself. So being gentle is a game changer. And most people aren't used to being gentle. They're used to being harsh. And once a person learns to grow in their awareness, that makes all the difference in the world. And as you've obviously figured out, then you save yourself the grief that you put yourself through. I mean, just when I was telling you that story of being down on yourself, beating yourself up because you missed a green light and you're now stuck at a red light, you probably heard, well, you definitely heard, but you probably also felt the energy coming from me as I was beating myself over the head over and over and over again. How can you miss this? How can you? So if you learn to be gentle, you're saving yourself from that anguish, mental, emotional, spiritual anguish.
So taking you right back to the very beginning, because you have had anguish, for falling off a bridge when you were 5. I won't ask you why you was on the bridge or anything, because, that's not really important. But the important thing is there doesn't seem to be kind of any resentment from you that these things were linked. You were in a coma, you had damage to your ear, then you had to learn to walk, you got picked on at school. That should really make you quite a bitter person, I would have thought. I know quite a few kids who, unfortunately, bullying happens and they find school a horrible experience. I was very lucky. I just breezed through it, but I know the opposite view is prevalent. And I know that they would love to go back to a school reunion so that they could, say a few words to their tormentors, and they just got like this kind of bit of you. You haven't. And is that just because of maturity, or is that totally you?
There comes a point where you just have to forgive and move on. And that's really the fourth thing. We talked about being open. We talked about being receptive. You got to be gentle, but you also have to be forgiving. And that means forgiving yourself and other people. And that took me a long time, David. And that's still something that every once in a while rears its ugly head. And I have to remember that person that wronged me has been forgiven. I know I no longer have to carry that burden. And that took a while because, there were kids in school. There were relationships that my mom and my dad were involved in that a child, should have had no part in that relationship at all, and shouldn't have had to watch some of the drama that unfolded right in front of me. But I had to forgive for my own benefit. One of the things that I write about in the Finding Your Voice book, and it's a quote that many of us have heard. I'm sure you've heard it before too. But not forgiving is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. That's a worn out phrase. I don't know if it's worn out, but it's well used. But it's absolutely totally accurate. And I got to that point where, you know what, I just have to forgive. And I have to also understand that the people in my past that have done less than noble things to me or with me, they were doing the best that they could based on what they knew of the situation at the time. And that includes my parents. And that's a bitter pill to swallow sometime. But really, my folks and the people that were involved with them were doing the best that they could based on the information that they had at the time.
So what's the most important, Joel? Out of those four, I'm looking down at them and I've written them down. Open, receptive, gentle, and forgiving. Probably forgiving is the key one, isn't it? To start getting on that journey of improvement.
Well, really, you can lump 3 and 4 both together, because if you are gentle with yourself, now that I think about it, that also means having a forgiving nature. So I would, now that I think about it, I would probably put those two in the same category.
When you first went behind the mic and
yes, sir,
you're podcasting, Was that just to build up confidence in yourself, or was it to grasp a wider audience for your passions?
Sure. Now, that is a great question. In the 90s, David, I entered radio broadcasting, like terrestrial, traditional radio.
Yeah.
It's kind of a dying breed these days, but that's where I entered. I entered radio, and then right after that, I entered television. I was on-air talent, and then I was also behind the scenes. And you know this because you're a rock star podcaster, but it's broadcasting is something that gets in your blood. And even though I left the traditional biz in 75, or I'm sorry, I don't know where that came from. In 97, I left the biz. Boy, being back on the radio, back behind the mic, back on stage was just something that just was a part of me. It goes back to the story I told you about Kim earlier. It was just woven into who I was. Similar to, the story I told you about Kim. Broadcasting was woven into who I was. And it was just something I had to do. And no matter what job I had or what occupation or vocation, whatever you want to call it, I would always look for, okay, how can I get this message on the radio? How can I get this message on the television? So when podcasting started out of the gate, it was just something I had to do, had to do. And we started our podcast, about 5 years ago or so, 4 or 5 years ago. And it has just been phenomenal. Took a wonderful class with Cliff Ravenscraft, Podcasting A to Z, took it with my wife and I. And that was a game changer. And then that helped us with the Finding Your Voice show. And then I got involved with our mutual friend, John Lee Dumas, and Entrepreneur on Fire. And that just set me into a higher gear.
In what way?
Okay, sure. John and Kate and team, they really taught me how to build a business out of podcasting. If you want to do it as a hobby, that's great, because that's pretty much what I was doing, because that's all I knew how to do. But I really wanted to incorporate it into my business and make it into a business. And John and Kate have the blueprint, and I chose to follow the blueprint. And after some what I like to call heated fellowship with my wife and a lot of prayer, we decided that, that's what we're going to do. And we just recently launched our show. Relaunch is the name of our show. And within 2 days at the time of this recording, we went from out of the gate to now we're new and noteworthy in all 3 of our categories.
Congratulations.
Last time I looked, it was the top row in one of our categories, but in all 3 we're there. So the plan that we've learned from John and Kate is stellar and phenomenal. And then we are just so excited. And here's how excited and committed we are to relaunch, to podcasting, and to helping people find their voice and to join their own dots. Pay, I don't even know if I should be telling you this, David, but it is what it is. Pay actually sold her dental practice, about 2 or 3 weeks ago.
That must have been a hard thing for her to do, though.
Well, it was something that we just agreed was time for.
Okay.
And the practice had been very good to us for 8 years. And over that period of time, we have grown closer as a couple and as also business partners. And then we decided that, if we want to take a relaunch and we want to blast it off to a whole nother stratosphere, we need to be side by side, working together, instead of just a hobby for one person and kind of a full-time gig for another person. And that's how committed we are to relaunch and to helping people build their podcast and their business.
You don't know how lucky you are to have a supportive partner, because so many of the entrepreneurs and non-entrepreneurs, the actors and professionals that I've been speaking to, have said that until they hit that tipping point, that there was a financial future that could be seen, their partner couldn't quite get it. They supported the individual, they loved their passion, they were there for them, but they couldn't see it. And I'm still in that situation now. My wife can't quite grasp what I'm doing. And I keep having to say to her, look, it will get there. It will get there. I need to build an audience. I need to provide content which is fresh every single day, but powerful and motivational. And I think I can do that. But it's going to take time. It's going to take time. And she believes in me. So for somebody to be, a kindred spirit and working on the mechanics of the business as well, that's rocket power, isn't it?
Absolutely. That is the booster fuel that will drive your podcast and your business. A lot of people, it's a challenge, and it was a challenge for us. And frankly, David, it still is. But if you put together a plan to show the money, it seems to provide a lot of comfort in another person that doesn't quite understand the podcasting or understand what other entrepreneurs are trying to do with social media and word of mouth and all that. But if you put together a plan and then both people agree on the plan, don't have to understand all of the intricacies, the bells and the whistles, but agree on the plan and then also agree on a time limit. I find that can make a tremendous difference and can add a lot of stability is not the word, but can add a lot of motivation to both people.
I've asked this question to quite a few people, actually, and I'm going to ask it to you. When you started on this journey, and I'm going to play the Steve Jobs speech in a moment because I think we're round about that time when it's useful to hear that again. But when you started on this journey, what superpowers, what super talents did you have that the average man out there listening in thinking, I'd like to be like Joel? What did you have that they haven't got?
That's a good question, David. I don't think that I had anything that anyone else didn't have. I was just willing to take action on it. And I think that was the big game changer, taking action. I knew what I was good at. I knew what I was passionate about. And I had a pretty good understanding for the vision that I wanted to create for my life or for my family's life. And I just took action on it, and I stayed focused. And boy, that's a challenge. It continues to be a challenge. But it's like John Dumas says, follow one course until successful. Easy? Heck no. But it's a wonderful, wonderful source for us to remember. Follow one course, and that's what we continue to do with many challenges, like other people have, everyone has. But it's just to know what we're committed to, and then being able to take action on it. One of my mottos, and I say this, gosh, I probably said it on my last batch of podcasts. I probably said it five times in all the interviews, back to back to back, like you do. But get it done, then get it right.
Yeah.
And you can tweet that out too. But what I find that when people really understand that concept, get it done, then get it right, it can make all the difference in the world. And most people do the opposite of that. They work so hard tweaking and tightening and loosening and trying to get it right before it's done, that they waste all their time, their energy, and oftentimes their resources. Like Seth Godin says, ship it and then get it right. Here's the thing with that. You're going to make adjustments and tweaks anyways. So you might as well just ship it ahead of schedule, knowing that, there's going to be adjustments. There's going to be maybe some bumps that we need to smooth out and some interchanges that we need to make, but let's just get it out there. Taking action.
Richard Branson
Taking
says,
action.
"Screw it, let's do it," or "Screw it, just do it."
That's going to be my new motto.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to the tattoo parlor right after this interview. That's it.
I think that really does say it, doesn't it? Because he says most of his bigger successes were opportunities that he said, I can do, and then went and found out how to do stuff or asked people. He said there's so many opportunities that bypass us because you look at it and you go, oh, no, I'm not quite ready for that, or no, that's too big for me, but it's only the fear factor keeping us where we are. And that really leads us on to where sort of Steve Jobs was talking about. So I'm going to play this speech now, and I'm going to ask your thoughts on this afterwards, Joel. This is Steve Jobs.
You bet.
Of course, it was impossible to connect the dots looking forward when I was in college, but it was very, very clear looking backwards 10 years later. Again, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever, because believing that the dots will connect down the road will give you the confidence to follow your heart even when it leads you off the well-worn path, and that will make all the difference.
What do you reckon?
Yeah, if you have a vision, you've got to go for it. You absolutely have to go for it. One of the things that I encourage all my clients to do is to develop a vision. And I think that word vision, David, it scares and it paralyzes a lot of people, because people think, okay, if I have a vision for my life, that means I have to have this, full feature avatar-like, movie kind of fully produced and playing on the back of my forehead. And frankly, I don't know if God reveals things to people in that way, but what I do know is that that God reveals things to people in glimpses, sneak peeks, and previews. And when I'm helping people create a vision for their life, for their business, it's grabbing onto some of those sneak peeks, some of those coming attractions, previews, and putting them down on paper. Not getting bogged down in the how, but just knowing what you're trying to do, what you're trying to accomplish, what you're trying to create. And what I found is that once you're clear on the business that you're trying to build, you don't have to know all the bells and whistles yet. Once you're clear on the business that you're trying to build or the life you're trying to create, then the how oftentimes takes care of itself. It's amazing the things that happen once a person is clear on what they're trying to create or what they're trying to do. Branson didn't know how to run a airline. He didn't know how to run Virgin Airlines, but he knew that was part of his vision. So once he established that as part of, Branson stuff, Branson Enterprises, then the rest of it was just details. Got to have a vision. Start with what you know, not with what you don't know.
I've got a vision of this show, and I've mentioned it a couple of times, but I kind of scare myself when I'm talking about it. It just seems too big in my head, and so I've kind of stopped talking about it. But it's in the back of my mind, and the reason is I'm better with doing the bite-sized chunks than looking at the big picture. The big picture just is too much for me to handle, and I just go running, screaming into a cupboard somewhere and sort of lock myself away. But by doing these tiny little things, for example, the internal dialogue. When I launched this show back on April the 30th, I had built up everything I possibly could to come out of the blocks. Bang! I thought I was going to get some amazing downloads and everything was going to be rosy in the garden. And I'd got 6,000 plus Facebook followers, and I'd got Twitter followers, and the social media platform was there, and I recorded 40 episodes of the show, and I'd got better and better and better in doing them. So I thought I was on for a winner. And the very first day I launched, I tell everyone, 45 downloads. And I thought, well, that's not bad, for a first show. And then the second day I got 54. And then the next day I got 22. And then the next one about 24. And then I got into New and Noteworthy. And as you were saying, New and Noteworthy, for anyone who's doing a podcast, you go into iTunes and they put you in an area which basically has more eyes on it. So hopefully you get a bit of juice, and people will go onto iTunes, and instead of sort of trying to find you, you're pretty much where their eyes fall. And so you should get more listeners. And I went into New and Noteworthy on 3 categories, and next day 109. And I thought, this is it, I'm on my way. 22. 22. And I was thinking, well, how does this New and Noteworthy work then? Because I'm not getting any juice here at all. Then I started thinking to myself, well, people can't like the show. They can't like the show. Why would 100 people listen to it on one day and then 22 the next day? That's 80 people that have just gone, this is rubbish. There's other shows out there. Then I got an email. I got an email from a lady called Paige in Arizona. And if you're listening, Paige, thank you so much for this. And it was just an unprovoked thank you for putting the content out there. And it made me realize at that stage, no, hang on, I shouldn't be focusing on the downloads. I should be focusing in on the individuals. And if I focus in on providing value to the individuals, hopefully things will take care of themselves. But I was almost ready to pull the plug, even though I'd done everything I possibly could to create this show. Those low levels, when it was ticking along, I couldn't see what I could have done better. But then once I did see, it's all been plain sailing since then.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. There's something about commitment. And once you're committed, doesn't mean you won't have doubts. But once you're committed and you go forward anyways, you never know when your moment is going to get here. And it might be slow starting, but it will come. If you fully believe in what you're doing, and you know that it's something that you cannot not do, then you just gotta go for it, and surround yourself with people that believe in your dreams. I call them relaunch relationships. You've got to have relaunch relationships for a blast off into a better second half. Relaunch relationships, and those are people hopefully under your own roof, and also mentors, coaches, people from the outside, people that can give you an unbiased perspective, people that don't have an agenda for your life, people that will just shoot straight up with you. You got to have that.
How do you take advice when you're so
not very well?
When you're so passionate about something, and you really want it to be good, and you're setting yourself out in a very public place, and people start saying, Joel, we think you're missing a beat here. We don't think it's as good as you think it is. How do you deal with that?
Well, like anybody, I have hesitation, and then I begin to have a little bit of inner doubt in my own abilities. And did I read that right? I mean, am I catching this right in my spirit, in my thoughts? And then I take into consideration what they said, but I also realize that it's going to come down to the decision that I make for myself. And I'm pretty committed in my decisions. Am I 100% right all the time? No, of course not. But more times than not, when I stay true to what I feel in my heart, in my spirit, it comes out where everybody benefits. May not come out exactly looking like I thought it should look, but it will come out to everyone's benefits. And one of the things that I love about doing podcasts with personal development gurus and world-class speakers is I get tremendous coaching, over the air coaching, hearing about their stories, learning about their struggles, hearing about how many people said no to them, hearing Larry Winget tell the story about how he grew to hate his audience, to hate his life, and to hate his wife because he was trying to connect somebody else's dots and not his own.
Well,
And
why would that be, though? Why would he be ignoring himself? Because you've got to get yourself right, haven't you, before anyone else?
Without a doubt, you do. Well, in Larry's case, he was trying to be a speaker just like every other speaker. There was no difference maker in him. He wasn't the Larry Winget that we all know. He was just your average vanilla motivational speaker, talking about the same thing that motivational speakers generally talk about. You got to think positive. You got to do all the right things. You got to touch your head. You got to stand on one foot. You got to, read these declarations every morning. He was saying the same thing that pretty much everyone else was saying. And there's a lot of value in some of those things that I just briefly mentioned, into incorporating them into your relaunch routine. Yeah, there's definitely value there, but that wasn't what Wing It was all about. And he told me, he said, I'm contrarian in nature, and I'm very confrontational, and I had to be that guy. And Larry says that when he was heckled one time at a speaking gig, somebody stood up and heckled him, and Larry didn't know what to say because he'd never been heckled before. And Larry said words that are immortal now. He said, "Shut up, stop whining, and get a life." And when Larry said that, the entire room erupted in laughter, and Larry received the very first standing ovation he had ever received. And after that gig was over and he went home, he pierced his ears, went out and bought some outrageous cowboy boots, got himself some jeans to replace the Dockers that he would wear every day, and he gave birth to the Larry Winget that people see on stage today. And his career has gone up several stratospheres because he connected his own dots. He was trying to live up to everyone else's expectations, but he got to the point where he couldn't do it anymore because he was too full of resentment. So.
And you can't play that part too many times without it crumbling somehow, can you? I used to say, and I still kind of go along with this at the beginning, fake it until you make it. And if you're uncomfortable with doing public speaking, pretend you're someone else who is comfortable, and it kind of gives you a comfort blanket that you can wrap around you and get through the job. But next time it's not quite as scary, and so on and so on. But once you do find that inner voice that is you, I remember once standing up there doing a course, and suddenly people were laughing, and I thought, why are they laughing? And I realized it was just because I was being totally myself. And once I was totally myself, I thought, I can play around with this. And I did. And to be honest, I took it too far when I was more focused on the jokes and stuff more than the actual content. And I had to pull it back. But it was all part of my learning process of actually finding myself, And now I think that I'm as close to my natural self as I can be on the mic. And certainly people that I used to work with who've been listening to this have been saying, this is just you. It's just you having conversations. So, I'm quite happy with that. That's one of those kind of phrases that I kind of think, I know it sounds easy. I know it sounds like we're just having conversations, but it means that we're comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely. Got to be yourself.
Got to be yourself. Now, with you, sir, you have been yourself many different times. And this is the part of the show that I'm going to send you back in time to have a one-on-one with your younger self. And if I could send you back like Marty McFly, where would you want to have a one-to-one with? I.e., what age of Joel would you choose? So I'm going to play the music. This is the sermon on the mic. Once it fades out, I'm going to stay totally silent, and you're on. This is the sermon.
Okay.
Here we go with the best bit of the show, the sermon on the mic, the sermon on the mic.
Joel, I think what you really need to do is you need to pay attention to what it is that brings you life, that what makes you light up, that makes you be on fire with yourself and in the service that you're giving to other people. You have a passion to help people to overcome their own challenges, just like you've overcome with a lot of help the challenges in your life, coming out of the hospital, going through special education, learning how to walk a straight line again, literally learning how to walk a straight line. You've overcome tremendous challenges, and you're a guy that wants to do the same thing for other people. And they may not be the same challenges that you went through, but it's still challenges and stumbling blocks and hurdles that other people come across that you are on fire to help people with. And what you need to do, Joel, is not worry about what other people think you should do, or not worry about what a job title sounds like, or the prestige that may or may not be involved with a certain occupation. But you've got to do what you cannot not do, and that's be of service to people, serving them in the way that you are best designed and equipped to serve them, to be a go-with guy, to walk alongside them, to walk behind them, to sometimes walk in front of them, to lead, to guide, and to help people make a difference in the world, a difference that makes a difference to them. That's what you have to do. Don't worry about what other people think. Just do what you know.
What age, Joel, was that?
18.
So you were just going into sort of college, or just you were in college at the time, were you?
Well, the thing was, thanks for asking. I had developed this plan of going into the military. I was going to go into the Marine Corps right out of high school. I had already taken the entrance exam. I was meeting with my recruiter, doing some functions, and that was my plan. And I was going to go into the Marine Corps. I was going to be there for 20 years, going to be a career military officer, and then I'll retire in my 40s, and then I'd be able to relaunch into a second career. And because of the hearing loss that I suffered at age 5, I was immediately disqualified from the Marines, and that tore me apart for several years. And it wasn't just the Marines, but it was then the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the State Guard, the local fire department, so forth and so on, kept finding that reason to keep me from service, from serving people in that way. And that was tremendous. And that heartbreak right there was the shattering of my plans right out of high school. So from that, then I was like a pinball in a machine, bouncing around from, okay, well, I guess I'll do this. And, personal banker, yeah, that sounds kind of worthy. Let me try that. And recruiter, sure, I can do that. That sounds kind of cool on my business card, or account executive, so forth and so on. But it took a long time before I realized that, you know what, I just need to do what I was put here to do. Serve people in the way that will help them move forward in their life, using what I've learned and what I'm good at, which is speaking, coaching, broadcasting.
And connecting those dots.
Yes.
Just before you go, Joel, just before I let you go, I know you've got some free resources that you are offering to our listeners.
Absolutely. Yeah, I wrote a fun ebook. It's an easy read. It's a flip through type ebook. 7 Days to Self-Care. and it is very, very popular. And for your audience, of course, it's absolutely free. Go ahead and just put that link right there on the show notes. And I love this little handy resource, 7 Days to Self-Care, because going back to what I said earlier in the interview about being gentle, well, when you practice some self-care, that's when you learn how to become gentle with yourself. And it's just 1 day a week, something on Monday, something different on Tuesday, something different on Wednesday, and so forth, just to get into the practice of self-care. And we all need that kind of practice. The other ebook that I have, this is a fun ebook. It's called Passion. Reconnect with what lights your fire. And this is a neat ebook that actually uncovers 4 rock solid clues that can lead you to your passion. And one of the people that I highlight and feature in the book is podcast superstar Cliff Ravenscraft, actually the first podcaster that I actually studied under. And he talks about his journey, and we weave it into, how he was able to really figure out that, podcasting was his passion, not to mention a little bit on how he was able to wrap a business around his passion. So 7 Days to Self-Care, great ebook. And then Passion, Reconnect with What Lights Your Fire ebook. And number 2, absolutely happy to make those ebooks available to your audience.
The links will be on the show notes. Joel,
Yes.
Thank you so much for spending time with us today, joining up the dots. And as I say to every guest, please come back again when you have more dots to join up, because the beauty of this show is that our histories keep on going forward. And I really do believe that the only way to build our futures is by reflecting and actually connecting our pasts. So, Joel, Thank you so much.
It's been fun, David. Thanks for having me.
David doesn't want you to become a faded version of the brilliant self you were once to become. So he's put together an amazing guide for you called the 8 Pieces of Advice that every successful entrepreneur practices, including the 2 that changed his life. Head over to joinupdots.com to download this amazing guide for free, and we'll see you tomorrow on Join Up Dots.